The rain was still dripping from the edges of the old gas station roof when a small, trembling voice broke through the rumble of motorcycle engines. The bikers had just stopped after a long ride, their jackets soaked, boots muddy, and hearts focused only on the warmth of coffee waiting inside. But everything changed the moment they saw a little girl, no more than 7, holding a small pink bicycle in hands that were shaking from cold and hunger. Her hair was messy, her eyes dull like fading candles, and her dress looked 2 sizes too big as if it was borrowed from a past she no longer remembered clearly. She stepped forward as the biggest biker, a tattooed man with a scar that ran down his cheek, turned toward her. Before he could say a word, she pushed the bicycle toward him with all the courage she could gather and whispered that she wanted to sell it. Not because she wanted money for herself, but because her mother hadn't eaten in 2 days. That fragile, heartbreaking confession echoed louder than thunder in their chests. And right in that moment, none of the bikers had any idea that behind this child's hunger was a story so dark, so cruel, that it would pull them into a fight far deeper than they expected, a fight against the very man who had taken everything from her family. If this powerful beginning touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts. If you believe in kindness, in helping the helpless, and in giving second chances, your support means everything. The bikers, tough on the outside but carrying unexpected softness within, watched the little girl hold her breath as she waited for an answer. The leader of the group, known for riding into storms both literal and emotional, quietly bent down and examined the bike, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to understand how desperate a child had to be to try selling her only toy in the cold. The pink paint was chipped, the handles worn, and one wheel slightly bent. It wasn't worth much in the world of money, but in the world of childhood, it was priceless. Yet the girl held it out like she was offering the last piece of her life. Her ribs were faintly visible beneath the fabric, as if hunger had carved stories into her tiny frame. Her lips trembled, and she kept swallowing as if trying to push down the emptiness in her stomach. The bikers could feel the weight of her words sinking deep, and though they looked intimidating with their tattoos and leather, every one of them felt something inside them break. The child's world had not always been like this. There had been a time when her mother smiled easily, when the house smelled of warm bread, when laughter echoed through the small living space. But all of it had started falling apart when a new landlord showed up, a man who spoke softly but carried a cruelty that tore their lives apart piece by piece. He had come with promises at first, promising repairs, promising help, promising kindness. Instead, he raised the rent without warning, threatened eviction, and when the mother couldn't pay, he seized her belongings. Her job was lost shortly after, sabotaged by the same man when she complained. He controlled everything, her home, her future, her access to water and electricity. One by one, he took what little she had, leaving her with nothing but her daughter and the increasing terror of hunger. The girl had watched everything silently, too young to understand laws, justice, or cruelty, but old enough to know when her mother cried herself to sleep. The bikers didn't know any of this yet. All they saw was the hunger, the desperation, and the bravery of a child who had stepped forward to save her mother. They surrounded her carefully, like shielding her from a world too cruel for such small shoulders. In long, heavy silence, the leader reached into his jacket, but the girl shook her head, refusing to take money as charity. She insisted that the bike must be bought, because her mother had taught her that even in hunger, they must keep their dignity. Her mother had told her that they were poor, but not beggars. She believed her mother's pride was the last thing poverty hadn't stolen. So she stood firm, waiting. The bikers exchanged glances that held 1,000 unspoken decisions. They knew a child shouldn't hold such burdens. They also knew someone had failed her. Not fate, not luck, but some human being, some person who had made choices that crushed innocent lives. The leader finally placed a large amount of money in her small hand, much more than the value of the bike, and then gently pushed the bicycle back to her. It wasn't a sale, it was a silent promise. But before they could leave, the girl hesitated and told them something that made their hearts turn to ice. She said she didn't know if they should go back home right now, because the landlord had come earlier, shouting that he would take the last thing they had, their home. And her mother had been crying on the kitchen floor when she left. This was the moment the bikers realized that this wasn't just about hunger. This was about injustice, vicious, calculated, ongoing. And injustice was something they had no tolerance for. They followed the girl home, riding behind her as she pedaled her little bike through streets she knew too well. The path led them to a small building at the edge of the town. Paint peeled from the walls, the windows were cracked, and the door hung crooked. Inside, They found the mother slumped over the table, pale from hunger, her eyes wide with embarrassment and fear when she saw the bikers. She tried to stand, tried to apologize, tried to hide her shame, but her body gave out and she collapsed. The bikers caught her, carried her gently, and laid her on the sofa. One of them hurried out for food while another checked her pulse. She was only starving, exhausted, and broken. Her spirit had been destroyed long before her body gave in. When she regained her breath and strength, she told them everything, how the landlord had manipulated her, how he seized her late husband's tools, her furniture, her job, and her savings through threats and forged papers. Her story was a tragedy written in slow motion, each chapter more painful than the last. She had tried legal help, begged neighbors, pleaded with the landlord, but every door had closed. Poverty is loud when it cries, but often invisible when it seeks justice. She said she didn't want revenge. She just wanted enough to feed her daughter and a place where they wouldn't sleep in fear. But the bikers wanted more. They wanted the man responsible. And they found him. He lived comfortably, smug in the confidence that poor women rarely fight back. But he did not expect a group of hardened bikers to knock on his door. What followed was not violence. It was justice delivered in a form he couldn't manipulate. The bikers brought authorities, reporters, and legal documents exposing his frauds. The mother was not his first victim, but she would be his last. With the bikers' help, he was charged, his properties seized, and his influence shattered. For the mother and daughter, life finally began to heal. The bikers helped her find a new home, a stable job, and safety. They visited often, bringing groceries, laughter, and hope. The little girl slowly regained her smile, her cheeks regained color, and her bicycle, the one she once tried to sell to save her mother, became a symbol of the day their lives turned. Months later, on a sunny morning, she rode that same pink bike around the park, waving at the bikers and her mother sitting nearby. Life had not magically become perfect. But there was peace, dignity, and the warm assurance that they were no longer alone. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places, from hearts wrapped in leather and fire, carrying stories of their own, willing to protect innocence wherever they find it. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your one click helps these emotional stories reach more people who still believe in kindness.